Okay, hi. So, good morning, everyone. We're going to begin, I think, because it's already 25 past, with the panel we're hosting in this room. Is a mixed panel. It was supposed to be 3 people here, but Maria Sanabria has not been able to attend. So we'll be hosting both of Laura Cirizas and Facundo Agustín Díaz, Briz Rojas's talks. So to begin with, we'll be welcoming Laura, who is online. Good morning, Laura. Laura Ciriza Martin is currently pursuing a PhD in comparative literature and literature studies at the University of the Basque Country, EHU, which explores the Gothic conventions present in George R. R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire. Prior to her doctoral studies, she earned a bachelor's degree in English studies with a minor in English literature in 2020 and a master's degree in comparative literature and literary studies in 2023 from the same institution. She has previously participated in different conferences, most recently the 2025 Rio Student Symposium. You know her by her vest, Objects in American Literature or Culture, and in 2017 Laura was named as the winner of the el octavo concurso internacional universitario de microrelatos, Félix Menchaca, in the English category. And today she's here to talk about 1,000 Eyes and One Weirwood Trees as Gothic figures of animistic memory and vegetal otherness in A Song of Ice and Fire. So whenever you want, Laura, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Well, first of all, I'm so sorry for not being able to be there with you, but life happened. So thank you, Alba, for this presentation. And well, as Alba has said, I will be speaking about this paper, which I decided to title 1,000 Eyes and One, Weirwood Trees, Gothic Figures of Animistic Memory and Vegetal Otherness in A Song of Ice and Fire, which is kind of a mouthful, but will become easy to understand over the next 10 minutes or so, hopefully. So here is how I've structured this presentation. And well, if anything happens with the PowerPoint and you need to interrupt me, that's fine. Thank you. I will first introduce the topic. Then I will delve into the body, which I have divided into 3 comprehensible parts before reaching conclusion. So, what are we doing here? Well, this presentation explores the weirwoods as Gothic figures animated by what Bottin calls the return of the repressed, the resurgence of suppressed histories, non-human agencies, and animistic forms of being that deserve the apparent rationality of the present. Beginning with, so what are the weirwoods? Because well, to start, their visual and material qualities immediately establish their Gothic nature. Their contrast in their coloring, white as bone and red as blood, evoking the imagery of death. Each tree bears a human face, often weeping, red sap from carved eyes, as if the landscape itself were endowed with this capacity to grieve or accuse. This blending of animate and inanimate, of tree and body, exemplifies the fascination with. Good. So the weirwood is also a structure around which sacred and social life is organized, and every castle in the north is built around a god's good, and every god's good centers upon a heart tree. So these enclosed groves recall the claustrophobic architecture of the Gothic castle. Yet unlike the kind of fortress, the weirwood's grove is alive, it's breathing, and it's omniscient. The carved faces that gaze outward suggest both divine watchfulness and the unease of being perpetually observed. The weirwoods, therefore, create a mood of reverent dread. They are both gods and witnesses, embodying an order of consciousness that is older, vaster, and less knowable than human faith. Because of this, their grotesque beauty reflects an aesthetic of sacred horror. They are the remnants of an ancient religion, the faith of the old gods, rooted in the animistic practices of the children of the forest that I will mention later. And the endurance of these trees, many of which are said to live forever if left undisturbed, grants them the stillness of tombs. This vitality unsettles the human characters who encounter them, particularly those like Catelyn Stark, whose faith originates in the south. For such observers, the God's good is not only alien, but uncomfortably sentient, because it radiates a holiness that feels immediate and strange. Through these qualities, the forest, which is traditionally a site of pastoral refuge, becomes charged with dread. And what should be familiar takes on the attributes of the supernatural. In this way, Martin reworks the Gothic's architectural inheritance, replacing the medieval castle, abbey, with a living structure of wood and sap. The result is an ecology that is at once divine and haunted, where every tree becomes a threshold between the human world and something older and less comprehensible. Regarding the weregood's temporal dimension, well, if the physical features of the weregoods evoke the Gothic through their unsettling presence, the temporal and metaphysical properties do so through their relation with memory. Let's see if I can explain. So the trees themselves remember. Within the mythology of Martin's world, the children of the forest, who are the pre-human inhabitants of Westeros, believed that their spirits lived on in these weregoods, and that the trees held the accumulated knowledge of generations because of this. The weregoods thus constitute a living archive, where consciousness and landscape merge into one and become a continuous act of recollection. This organic memory, what happens with it is that it collapses linear time. So for the rare individuals that are able to see through the eyes of the trees, who are called green seers in this world, the boundaries between the past and the present dissolve. How? Well, the consciousness of the weregood sees events in time as simultaneous, not successive. So the dead and the living coexist within this vision. Through such communion, characters like Bran Stark experience the world as an unbroken continuum of history and nature, a temporal Gothic space where the past cannot be buried because it has never really ceased to exist. In this sense, the weregoods literalize the obsession with the return of what has been repressed that I mentioned before. And for example, the south of Westeros, which is deforested of God's goods, represents an order that has attempted to sever itself from the animistic consciousness embodied within these trees. But the north, where these trees still stand, reveals the impossibility of that severance. The old gods endure, not as abstract symbols, but as sentient beings, reminding humanity of the persistence of non-human agency. The fear they inspire is the fear of recognition, that the world itself may remember that human history is only one thread within a larger continuity. This aspect of the weregoods aligns them with what contemporary eco-Gothic criticism defines as form of vegetal hunting. So the notion that nature, far from being inert, acts as a repository for forgotten stories. The weregoods then transform the environment into an active moral witness, recording every single human act committed within their gaze. So rituals of marriage, executions, confessions held before them reinforce this duality of sanctity and surveillance. So what happens when humans encounter these trees? How do they interact with them? What does it mean for them? Well, if the first two dimensions of the weregoods concern their form and their memory, the third lies in their witnessing, in the way that human beings respond to them, pray to them, and are transformed in their presence. The faith of the old gods differs profoundly from the structured hierarchical religion of the South that I mentioned. It has no temples, no written doctrine, no priests. Its rituals unfold in open groves and under the gaze of the trees. So worship here is not a dialogue between humanity and a distant abstract divine, but an encounter with the living world itself. In this faith, the weregood functions as both deity and observer. And as I mentioned, every vow and confession made before a hard tree, it's inscribed in this consciousness. This creates a spirituality that is founded on a sense that divinity inheres in the natural world, and that the trees themselves know everything, even though humanity may forget. The sacredness of the Godhood derives precisely then from this awareness. The believer feels both exposed but connected, and humbled before the vastness of non-human intelligence. Among the free folk, also called the wildings, who live beyond the wall, this communion with nature is even more visceral. The faith there has not been moderated by civilization, and it retains traces of its animistic and sacrificial origins. The wergods are treated not as symbols, but as living entities requiring reciprocity, sometimes reverence, sometimes blood. In this context, religion becomes a form of ecological participation. Of course, the Gothic resonance here lies in this intimacy between human and non-human. To pray to a hard tree is to recognize that one's body and spirit are in a continuum with the world's matter, that the boundary between person and environment is porous. This is both comforting and terrifying, of course. Comforting because it promises belonging, and terrifying because it forces the dissolution of individuality. The worshipper, this happens because the worshipper is absorbed into the living landscape and becomes a part of this consciousness that is far older and less comprehensible than their own. In this relationship, Martin imagines a form of spirituality that is profoundly ecological. The sacred here is inherent, embodied in the forest, rooted on the earth itself, evoking this interconnectedness with life and the fear of the world's changing nature. Because of this, the wergood's power lies in this double capacity to console, to condemn, to offer communion, while reminding the worshipper of their own impermanence. Therefore, the werewoods, with their physicality, transform the forest into a site of sacred unease. Their sentience collapses the boundary between past and present, and their worship reveals a profound interdependence between humanity and the natural world. They are indeed gods and witnesses and archives, living symbols of a consciousness that predates and will outlast, if allowed, humankind. In them, Martin relocates the Gothic from the haunted architecture to living ecology. The terror, therefore, that the werewolves inspire is not born of death, but of the knowledge that the world is alive, that it sees and remembers. Their silent faces remind us that the natural world, too, has its own history, its own agency, and its own form of haunting. In the case of the werewolves, then humanity is no longer master or maker, but merely one part of a larger remembering whole. Thank you so much. Here are the works that I cited and every single piece of art that I mentioned, which is official, right, that you saw in the presentation. And if you have any questions, doubts, insults, suggestions, throw them my way.
Thank you very much, Laura. We'll be holding up questions until the end of your presentation. Okay, so our second speaker in this panel is Facundo Agustín Brit Rojas, who is a graduate student that culminated his Bachelor of Arts degree in English Studies at the University of Oviedo in 2023 and his Master's degree in Comparative Literature and Literary Studies at the University of the Basque Country in 2024, where he is currently pursuing a PhD on the post-human and eco-critical value of fantasy literature. With insightful contribution of post-human philosophers such as Rosi Braidotti and Donna Haraway in mind, he is fully conscious of the relevant cultural, social, and historical value of imaginative literature. Imaginative literature provides humanity with beyond mere allegorical representations. Accordingly, he is fully convinced of the value, critical, potential fantasy, and with fiction with fiction can offer in the uncertain times of the early 21st century. And today he's here to talk to us about, to present his talk, Way Too Human, a post-human revision of late 20th century animal literature. So, Facu, whenever you want, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Alba, and thank you everyone for being here. it's a great honor for me to be able to present this. And well, so as the title indicates, my presentation is going to be about animal literature, understanding animal literature as literature that is about animals, or in which animals are usually the protagonists. Okay. So first thing I want to do is state that the conclusions to which I will arrive are strictly delimited by the theoretical framework I am applying. These literary works I will be analyzing here are, of course, amazing literary works of fiction, and I wanted to state that the conclusions, again, are strictly delimited by the theoretical framework. So, that said, the first manual I would like to reference is Ursula K. Le Guin's Chick by Joel, Talks and Essays on How and Why Fantasy Matters. And I'd like to highlight this first quotation. Animals were once more to us than meat, pests or pets. They were fellow creatures, colleagues, dangerous equals. We might eat them, but then they might eat us. And that's, saying that is what she's trying to convey with her famous Earthsea saga. One of the many points she tries to convey. So, in this manual, in this very brief manual, actually, Le Guin states in a very professional way how the fantasy genre has been reduced to mere escapism by the criticism of Marxist thinkers such as Darko Subin, and how its functionality and genealogy has been forgotten and undermined in favor of science fiction. And she also revised the fantastic value and its literary tradition, recognizing some of the J.R.R. Tolkien as some of his best authors, both in the fiction part and in the academic scope. Now, she is very conscious of the rise of eco-criticism and posthumanism in the late 60s and 70s, and she argues for the deconstruction of anthropocentric power over human and non-human beings. But we will see later this opinion is quite controversial. Now, in her book, these are the main premises, actually very controversial premises she usually addresses when talking about animal literature or fantasy literature in general, but specifically focused on eco-critical themes. So the first one is that for this objective, traditional heroic narratives are historically and socially regressive. And by traditionally heroic narratives, we go back to the ancient Greek poems and such as the Iliad and everything. Now, she also highlights the romanticization and idealization of the pre-industrial depictions of nature that many fantasy works of the 20th century display, such as The Lord of the Rings, for example. And she states that such return to the world of the folktale advocates for a wilderness that, or let's say, a definition of wilderness that no longer coincides with the current depictions of nature, usually marked by the rise of the climate change and the environmental movement. That said, she also highlights that fantasy is inherently post-anthropocentric. We will see in what ways, and she advocates for a sense of interconnected existence. And I like to highlight the interrogative mark there because, according to her own visions of interconnected existence, we can see that food, drink, transportation, sports, the animals provide all that to the villagers. In the image she took for reference for the title of the book, Chick by Joel, and therefore the villages provide for the animals, each at the service of one another. So, as you can see, she already establishes an equal relationship between humans and animals, which from the posthuman point of view or the animal studies point of view as intersectional theoretical frameworks may be very controversial or very erratic in some ways. So, on the other hand, the main theoretical framework I'm applying to these works will be post-anthropocentrism, understood by, in two ways. Post-anthropocentrism in the way that it is described as a reality we are currently living in now, by means that said, meaning that we live in a capitalist world in which the system is already perfectioning the consumption of all bodies that lives, being human and non-human, for the benefit of economic profit. On the other hand, we also have embodied subjectivity, which is a notion presented by Braidotti in Nomadic Subjects and also revisited in the Posthuman, that states that embodied subjectivity is the core of experience and perception. And from this point, she moves forward to the concept of egalitarianism. In this concept, she revisits Gilles Deleuze and Félix Guattari's rhizomatic thinking and builds egalitarianism as a way of becoming in which the human and the non-human are part of a whole. Now, against these concepts she advocates for, she also defines compensatory humanism as extending human rights or human perspectives into the animals and non-human beings of the planet, which actually ends up eradicating all sense of non-human agency they have for their own. And usually in fiction, this translates through animal anthropomorphism, that is, anthropomorphizing animals. Now, that said, coming back to Ursula K. Le Guin's book, Chic Bajol, she usually characterizes animal literature in three categories. First one is the animal biography, which I didn't consider very important here because it's basically describing the life of an animal as empirically and scientifically as you can. The second one is the animal novel, in which we have a piece of fiction, of a story of fiction or non-fiction, in which animals are either the protagonists or have a very important role, such as one of the animal literature beacons, What is It Down by Richard Adams. And on the other hand, she also defines fables and psychic fragments. Fables are these kind of stories that absolutely exploit the allegorical value of symbolism and, in this case, the animals, and psychic fragments, in which the non-human is usually used to depict aspects or experiences of the human psyche or the human mind. And the examples of these works I will be analyzing are His Dark Materials and Animal Farm. So for the sake of this presentation, which I later realized this has the potential of becoming or being a full thesis, I'm just focusing on two of the non-human creatures of His Dark Materials, which are the demons, and which are present throughout the whole saga, and the Mulefa, which are only present in the Amber Spyglass. Now, first we have the animal novel with What is It Down. The main problems with What is It Down is that Richard Adams has explicitly stated, not only in interviews but also in many forewords of this work, that he has made during his time he made lots of research about the scientific and biological life of rabbits, which are the main characters of this novel. So following this line of thought, we have detailed descriptions of animal habits and how usually human conventions distort the animal sense of the whole narrative, such as which we can see in this quotation. Now, there is another paradox we can find in this piece of literature: the attribution of human language to animals, and not also human language, human culture and mythology. And of course, is one of the most beneficial points of this work concerning this project is that it also has a part of ecological criticism, usually driven by which is let's say, the catalyst of the story, of these rabbits being exiled from their colony because of human exploitation of the land. Now we can see some of the images of the animated movie, and now, well, the conclusions I got through the analysis of What is It Down is that it comes with biological inaccuracy, and Ursula K. Le Guin also asserts this flaw. Basically, we are entering in the problem of attributing culture to nature. Richard Adams, again, has many times stated that he has based his story on actual rabbit biology and rabbit behavior. However, many of his characters tend to be kind of sexist. There's like a sexist, which is aspect to the rabbits, which is actually not accurate, because the rabbits of this story follow a patriarchal society, and Ursula K. Le Guin stated in Chick Bagyol that in her own criticism of this book, that actually rabbit society is conformed by a matriarchal leader, which is usually the mother that bears all of the children. Now, this aspect Ursula K. Le Guin developed into what she defined as moral regression, which is the use of animal protagonists as an excuse to regress to a lower bestial or inhuman moral level in order to justify certain aspects of human culture. We also have another example of this aspect is the militarism of the General Woundworth colony, which acts as the main antagonist of the novel. Now, on the other hand, Animal Farm, which is one of the most famous Orwellian works, it was very simple, let's say. The analysis of this work was absolutely simple. So, first of all, we have a fable that it is very clearly a political satire about the Russian Revolution, and the way the animals of the farm relate to the humans is a huge allegory of how socialist values can be corrupted by capitalist politics. And, sorry, not also the human-non-human relationship, but the non-human relationship between the animals themselves, as we can see with the character of Napoleon. Now, one of the best things about this work concerning this project is that it actually, at the very beginning of the story, acknowledges human domination over non-human animals, as you can see in this quotation, and which leads to current readings of the work, providing ecological criticism, in the sense that contemporary readings of biopolitics on the farm industry or vegetarianism may come to the fore of the discussion in nowadays. That is. Now, however, the conclusions we came to after analyzing Animal Farm is that it follows around many anthropocentric themes despite its ecological criticism. It is post-anthropocentric in the way that it also addresses the consumption of all bodies in a way that the animals of the farm also are an allegory of the working class. And that was also very interesting, how animals and people can be only seen as means of production. And it's also very interesting how this same quotation and this book challenge the vision Ursula K. Le Guin had about the companionship between humans and animals of the primitive farm industry. Now, last but not least, we have the historical materials. And the first issue we have here is the demon, I call the demon issue, or love for oneself. In this sense, we're talking about demons, these creatures that are usually linked to the person they are born with. They usually change, and up to a certain moment in the human life, they stop changing. Now, what's the problem with the demons and why they cannot express any non-human agency? The basic problem is that they are spiritual beings that are not embodied. They don't have a material body. They are merely extensions of the human mind. So, following the love for oneself motive, we can see that the Mrs. Coulter demon is just a reflection of the hatred she has towards herself, and Lyra's love for her demon Pan is a reflection of the love she has for herself. And again, this quotation also summarizes very well the demon-human dynamic and how it is stating very clearly that demons are actually extension of the human mind they inhabit. Now, these are the conclusions we came to, such as body as the essence of animality. If the animal has no body, there is no non-human agency. And it also has traces of animal anthropomorphism and compensatory humanism. I want to feel empathy towards this non-human creature because I see myself reflected in it. Now, the same goes for the Mulefa. Although it's a little different. Now, the Mulefa are a species of an alternative world in which they live in a sense of interconnected existence with their own natural environment. However, the problematic aspect of these creatures is the perspective they are presented through. The perspective of Mary Malone is a very anthropocentric and humanist perception by which she sees herself and humanity reflected on the intellect of these creatures. This is also problematic for a post-anthropocentric analysis because we can see the exclusion of non-sapient organic and inorganic life forms. So if it thinks or it talks, it is precious. We need to protect it. Well, again, this is a summary of all the conclusions I came to. And, well, overall, the conclusions of the animal literature issue I'm trying to explain is that, yes, Ursula K. Le Guin was right about when saying that animal literature helps us tackle reality through imagination. However, what the posthuman aspect or post-anthropocentric aspect of this presentation wants to achieve is that we need to try to approach non-human perspectives through alternative modes. That is, acknowledging the non-human agency of sapient and non-sapient organic and inorganic forms of life by coming back to human focalizers, deconstructing the human perspective of those human focalizers, and then trying to approach these non-human beings through a egalitarian or interconnected existence perspective. And that will be it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Facu. 1 second, I need to get this back to Teams. Yeah, good. Thank you. Okay, so as previously mentioned, we're going to move on to the questions now, but I will ask both the people at home and people here that if they want to ask anything to Facu or something that includes both speakers, that please they do it first, because Facu is in a bit of a hurry and he has to leave a little early.
Sorry.
Okay. Emma.
Hi, thank you both for your amazing presentations. I had some sort of a question for Facu. Regarding the last creature you talked about, I haven't read any of the books, but they reminded me, and I was talking about this with the lads, they remind me of aliens, movies about aliens or books about aliens. So we were talking about Avatar, for example. We think it might have the same strategy or the same way of representing the aliens. They are other non-human others, but they are used by the human main characters or by the human characters to think about themselves or reflect about themselves. So I was just wondering if you have considered any alien non-human others. I was also thinking about The Arrival. I don't know if you
I've seen it.
Yeah, so I was also so I think it's less obvious than the others, but I think that The Arrival is also a way of just using this radical otherness to think about us as humans. Thank you.
So basically, regarding the alien example, I always like to explain this concept, the same concept of the Mulefa I just explained, in a very just as an example, I said, imagine you go to another planet and how would you react depending on the life forms you found there. If the life forms were similar to us in the sense of sapient creatures, would you react differently? If they were non-sapient creatures, would we apply the sense of species supremacy we are already applying to the creatures we are actually living with in the sixth massive extinction, or would we try to project ourselves? And yeah, I think your examples are actually pretty good. And yeah, maybe the Navi, I think they are called from Avatar, are very also, although a very wrong example of not wrong, I want to say controversial example or polemic, because I don't think they fulfill the role very well. Yeah, I think those examples are very good. And concerning arrivals, yeah, I think more of the same as than you said. So yeah, I think you may be right.
I think we have
Thank
a
you.
Navi expert on the room if you want to talk about it later on lunch. And I wanted to comment that I would agree on the arrival bit, as I do think that its concept as a short story is more to reflect on humanity than it is about the aliens, which is something that the author De Chiang does very often. Are there any more questions? Yeah, okay. No.
I am not going to talk about Avatar, despite what people may expect, unless you want me to. First, I have to apologize because I haven't read the dark material, so maybe my question makes no sense. But when you were talking about the mulefa, the mulefa, which is the little elephant, right? You talked about how this Mary Malone saw the mulefa as a sort of primitive state of humanity, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, so she saw the mulefa basically as a primitive stage of civilization.
Yeah, so it's like primate orientalism, like Donna Haraway says. Okay, okay, that's thank you. That was very helpful. Yeah, so it was not a question. Well, it was a question, but very interesting presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else for Paco? I had a question for Laura, who I think she's still in the call, yeah. You've talked plenty about how the weirwood trees appear in their natural state, but I was wondering, what do they signify when they die, when we encounter actual weirwood trees in the narrative as weirwood, and that's it? Because I think there are a couple of examples in the books in which we encounter weirwood doors, right? That they are. Do you think that they tie into what you've been talking about? I cannot get the word right, but the whole oddness, this space that is not mediated by the other religions of Westeros, etc. Or is it something else that needs exploring on another direction?
I actually was thinking along the lines of what Paco just said. Like, what would you do if you got to a new planet and you found a different life form to what you understand? This is kind of what happened with the Children of the Forest. So when the Andals came, that way the south doesn't have any trees. Basically, like you get one at Raven Tree Hall, but it's dead. It's like empty inside. The other ones are just cut down. I know you know this. Well, minus the Isle of Gods, but that's something else. And then, so they cut down these trees, which were clearly important to the Children of the Forest. That started the war. And then what do they do with that good that they have from these sacred living things? They make doors. They make a throne, like the throne in the Vale, the throne of Arryn. It's basically a weirwood tree cut down. Like you still have the big like branches and everything. So I think that's a very interesting thing. I haven't delved into that because I'm going somewhere else with the thesis. So we will come back to that, I think, because I really, really, really enjoy it. Like what happens with that kind of like that killing not only of living things but of a religion that then refuses to die and then using it for your own benefit.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think there's another. Yeah, Natalia again.
Yeah. Sorry.
Don't apologize.
So,
This is good.
This is for Laura. And I'm going to reference something that is perhaps not very academic, but you may be familiar with it. There's this YouTube channel called In Deep Geek that does a lot of in-depth analysis of The Lord of the Rings, the Song of Ice and Fire. And I'm mentioning him because I got this idea from him, and we quote when we are scholars. So this man was talking precisely about the problem of the weirwood trees and what happens when they cut them down. And he points out that actually there's like, even if the stumps is the only thing that is left, there's still magic. So it's like they're still there. There's an instance where Jaime Lannister, he takes a nap on a weirwood stump and he has a dream. There is in the Tales of Duncan spoilers, very spoilers, I'm sorry. Brynden River's Bloodraven appears in sitting in a stump. We also have in House of the Dragon that Daemon Targaryen has these hallucinations because he's sleeping in a bed that is supposedly made of weirwood, and I understand this is like TV show and arguably different. But I wanted to not question exactly, but like ask you, have weirwood power and all that comes with it, all the revival of the Gothic, the repressed, has it really disappeared? Because there are even in the book they explain the weirwood. I think I'm pronouncing it wrong, but I don't mind. They explain it as a network. So there's this theory that it goes like the stamps are still connected. And there's even this story about, I think it's in the Reach, they have weirwoods there as well, but they are very thin. And they even mention like they have tried planting one in the Vale of Arryn, but it didn't quite work because the roots just couldn't go deep enough. So I wanted to ask you about this, like, what comeback do you think the old religion and the Gothic and all that it symbolizes will have? Sorry, this is a huge question. May have or may mean for, what we were talking about.
I'm gonna take it by parts. So first of all, do these stamps, even though they're cut down, still have magic? I think so. I mean, Jaime does have a huge vision because of that. And also, one of the quotes that I used with the picture of Lyanna Stark that I used was, I'm going to read it. There was something wild about the gods' wood, even here in the heart of the castle, at the heart of the city. You could feel the gods watching with 1,000 unseen eyes. And that is a quote by Sansa Stark. That is not where my title comes from, actually. It comes from Bloodraven. But yeah, and the Godswood, the hard tree in King's Landing at the Red Keep, it's cut down too. But Sansa still goes there and prays. And the fact that before she left the North, she didn't have that connection. She prayed more to the gods of her mother, but then she finds that connection after the loss of her father. So I think it's really important, and it really goes with what you said, that even though they have been cut down, they still hold that magic and that power. But the problem, of course, is that they cannot communicate, well, not to each other, but to the Green Seers. So in A Dance with Dragons, you have Bran, who can see things through this connection. He's connected to a weirwood tree that is north of the wall, but he can see things that happen in Winterfell, like thousands of years ago before he was born. He sees his father making an oath before the hard tree. Bye-bye, Fakwa, I love you. And the thing is that he cannot reach the south. He cannot see his sister praying there because the tree doesn't have eyes anymore. And this could have been kind of a war tactic for the Andals once they realized how important the trees were to the children of the forest. I'm not sure about that, but for sure they still keep their magic. Regarding Daemon Targaryen's visions in Harrenhal, in House of the Dragon, I am aware of them. I haven't watched. I watched the first season minus the last episode. I haven't watched season 2. I'm aware of everything. Okay, I'm still on Twitter. But since that is not mentioned in the book, I cannot make a comment on it, even though I think Harrenhal is haunted as hell. But doesn't necessarily come from the Weirwood itself, I think. As to how they come back, I think because of this way in which they preserve memory, the Weirwoods were supposed to help them to understand what happened during the last long night, I think. And that's why Bran goes beyond the wall. I mean, there's no other reason. He needs to understand what happened in the past to be able to prevent it in the present and save the future, to have that dream of spring, right, instead of just eternal winter. So I think that will come into play with him. But the fact that that network is lost and that he cannot access all of those memories might hinder him a little bit. But obviously that comes down to like the last stance that they're going to have and all of that. Especially because you have a character, and this I digress a bit, but the character that is teaching Bran is the one that I chose my title about. It's Lord Bloodraven, also known as Brynden Rivers, Targaryen bastard. But he has the blood of the Blackwood of Raventree Hall, which again is the last hard tree you have, apart from Harrenhal, that you have in the south. Did I miss anything? Oh yeah, the Ghostwood in the Eyrie with the Arryns. Yeah, you cannot plant them there. But I think that has more to do with the old gods of the mountain than anything else. Working on that on the thesis. And I will shut up now.
No, it's fine. We have plenty of still time. Thank you very much, Laura. And any other questions? I'm going to check chat.
Amazing question, by the way. Thank you.
Just in case. Yeah, I don't think. Yeah. Well, if there's no more questions in the room, I think we can bring this to a close. Thank you very much for everyone who attended, and Facu, who is not here anymore. Thank you so much for getting in and connecting, Laura. We've been missing a lot of presenters, so it's great that everyone who's been able to... yeah. Oh, okay. I can give it to you. Okay, like you can message Laura later. I will give Natalia your email if that's okay, Laura.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Sure, stalk me, spam me. I'm bored.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so thank you, again for connecting online. Thank you everyone watching from home and everyone who came here. It's what makes the conference go. And we'll be taking a break now, I think until 3 o'clock in the afternoon for lunch. If you are here with the conference, you can go to the cafeteria. If not, we'll be back here at 3. Thank you very much for coming. Bye.